Hello there, everybody. Hello there. Welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, please hit the subscribe button. Check out the content. There's plenty of content up there. Everybody else, welcome back. Welcome back. So, some breaking news in the mid-state murder of alleged murder of mid-state killing of Messiah Natwe, who was 22 years old. He was shortly beaten to death in Mid-State Correctional Facility not long after Robert Brooks was beat to death in Marcy Correctional Facility. So many of you have heard about this case already, but the updated information is that the officers have been named. Three of them have just been suspended without pay pending the investigation. The suspension is not the final outcome. The New York State Trooper's Office is investigating this case along with the Attorney General. So it does look like charges will be brought on officers in the beating death of Messiah Natwe, with witnesses, nine prisoner witnesses who are willing to testify that they watched the officers beat him to death. I will give you a little bit of my opinion on what's going on here, but I will also give you some facts about this case. The reason that I believe, this is just pure speculation, but the reason that I believe that Messiah Natwe may have been beaten to death is the fact that he was in a shootout with New York City police officers prior to in 2021. The fact that he was in a shootout with police officers, he was also shot himself in that shootout. And it was alleged that he shot at several New York City police officers. He was arrested and he was let out on bail, a $30,000 bail. Now, my opinion on that is that, to be honest, that is truly insane that you could get into a shootout with New York City police officers and be released on $30,000 bail. In my time, that would never happen. During the time when I used to get arrested, if you were caught with a weapon by itself without even firing it, your bail would be higher than $30,000 in New York during my time. If you fired a weapon at someone, your bail would be in the area of $100,000. If you fired a weapon on police officers, your bail would be $500,000 to $1,000,000. So the fact that Messiah Natwe was released on $30,000 bail is a disturbing reality of the liberal New York court system. He shouldn't have been out on the street. And I know they say innocent until proven guilty, but he was caught red-handed in a shootout with the New York City Police Department in 2021 and was out on bail. Now, because I say that, that does not mean that I justify the beating death of him. What I'm saying is that correctional officers were aware of who Messiah Natwe was. Okay. And during my 17 years incarcerated, I know what correctional officers do to people who have attempted murder charges or murder charges on the police, right? And what they do is they give them what they consider their payback. They're going to beat them. They may not beat them to death all the time, but I've seen it happen with my own two eyes. During my years in Attica, the correctional officers would discover that a prisoner was in there for murder of a police officer or for shooting a police officer, and that prisoner's life would become hell, and that was their payback. That was their justification. As Messiah Natwe was released on that bail, after he got on bail, he was then accused of two alleged murders within 24 hours of one another. He was alleged to have shot and killed a man named Jalen Duncan, who was 19 years old, in Harlem. And then the following evening, he was alleged to have shot and killed a bodega owner named Brandon Brunson in a bodega. So that was a double murder. So when we talk about Messiah Natwe, and I'm not here to badmouth him, but I am here to provide facts. He was an alleged gang member. um, who had allegedly killed two people within 24 hours. 2 years earlier, had shot at New York City police officers when he was 18 years old, which means he was allegedly running around with an illegal gun. And, so he was, asking for a lot of trouble. I mean, definitely was not on the right path, I should say, and he had a lot of issues in his life. And if these things are true, he put himself in the prison system. You know, and so he goes into the prison system, and he's in Marcy Correctional Facility, and this is where the officers allegedly beat him to death. The names of the officers that were released are Officer Joshua Bartlett, Correctional Officer Zachary Lalier, and Sergeant Francis Chandler. Okay, these three officers have been removed and suspended without pay and are under investigation. And now I'm going to read you a list of the other officers who have been removed. We have Correctional Officer Frank Jacobs. We have Correctional Officer Adam Joseph. We have Correctional Officer Jonah Levy. Correctional Officer Nathan Palmer. Correctional Officer Caleb Blair. Correctional Officer Daniel Berger. Sergeant Donald Slauson. Sergeant Michael Ifret. CO Craig Kilmick. CO Tristan Shepard, CO Thomas Eck, and CO Nicholas Vitale. Those are the others that have been removed and since suspended on the beating death. All of these individuals are alleged to have been involved in the beating death of Messiah Natwe. Um, this is, as I say, I don't justify the beating death of this man at all. It's very unfortunate that another person has died in custody. The list of individuals that have died in custody since the strike is in numbers that it's hard for me to even follow right now. There was quite a few that were beaten to death, many that were found dead. A lot of cases under scrutiny right now on what transpired. And in just bringing up some shortly other news, they just arrested yesterday another correctional officer on March 24th from Oswego County. Christopher Weber was arrested for downloading child pornography. This is correctional officer Christian Weber from Oneida County. He's been charged with a D felony. He's been suspended from his position, and this was for allegedly downloading child pornography. This is another correctional officer who has just been taken down. My what I can say about all this, and I believe it is important to say this, is that these sons and daughters and brothers and nephews that this is happening to inside of the prison system obviously need to stay out of the system. I do not justify the beating death of anyone, but these individuals are subjecting themselves to the abuse of the criminal justice system. They are subjecting themselves to the abuse of the correctional officers in the prison. And not all correctional, they, claim to have the goon squad in there. And I will tell you that they do have goon squads in prison. They do have beat up squads in prison. And that I will tell you that those goon squads and those beat up squads usually do not go out of their way to beat up and beat to death prisoners who are doing their time in a proper fashion. Again, don't say that I'm justifying the beating death of Messiah Natwe. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that from my personal experience, this is not an opinion. Okay, I lived in prison for almost 20 years straight in the most serious maximum security prisons that New York State has to offer, and I did time in Mid-State myself, where Messiah Natwe was. I did 2 years in that facility. I was in Wallkill. I was in Mid Orange. I was right across the street from Marcy, where Robert Brooks was killed. I was in these prisons personally, and um, I always said there's decent correctional officers. You can hear that and argue with it and yell about it, but it's the truth. There's a percentage of them that go out of their way to make life hell for people. But my point is that, if you were displaying these behaviors to end up in the prison system, right? And then you go into prison and you continue those behaviors and you don't change, right? You're going to, just like the police come after you on the street, right? When you act a fool, the correctional officers will come after you in prison when you act a fool. And so I'm not saying that Messiah Notwe did anything wrong because I wasn't there. Okay, so I can't speculate. But what I am saying is when you look at Messiah Notwe as an individual, and like when his parents go um, on television and say that they seek justice, I understand them being very upset. Okay. They lost their child. It's a terrible feeling and they seek justice. But what was happening is that in the officer's mind, I believe that they were seeking justice as well. You have a 18 to 22-year-old who is running around society carrying an illegal weapon, shooting at police officers, allegedly, shooting at, killing people, killing multiple people within a 48-hour period, involved in this thug life. And then he goes into prison. And then for those to think that this individual magically changed inside of the prison system in such a short period of time, they could be right. It's possible. But the point that I'm making by stating all that is, and don't get mad at me for stating all that, I'm not saying, I'm here to state facts. So for those of you who watch this and say, yo, that he still don't deserve a beaten death, you shouldn't say that. I understand that. I'm not justifying the beating death of of Messiah Notwe. What I'm telling you is, or explaining to you, is why these things happen. Because if you think that his behavior changed when he automatically went into prison, the odds are that it didn't change. You know what I mean? That's just the odds are that it didn't change. And so he could have been in prison still thinking he's this little gangster, still running around, running his mouth, still getting into trouble. And, I don't know what his disciplinary record was in there. And these officers find out that he's there for shooting, that he was arrested and out on bail for shooting at police officers, New York City cops. He could have mouthed off to them and it could have sparked everything where they ended up beating him to death. Obviously, I'm speculating, right? But I know how the system works and I know how things unfold in there. So it's an unfortunate situation that the kid died. Nobody deserves to be beat to death, no matter what he was in prison for, right? He didn't deserve to be beat to death. We understand that. But I'm telling you why these things happen, right? When I was in prison, and not just me, when you could look at me as a white guy in prison, but I'm talking about white guys, Spanish guys, black guys, right? When they carried themselves correctly in the prison system, there weren't groups of officers, excuse me, there weren't groups of officers looking to beat them to death for no reason, right? If you didn't disrespect officers, if you followed the rules and regulations, if you were concentrating on just doing your time, right? And officers weren't going out of their way to beat you to death. You can do 30 years in straight in prison without a problem with correctional officers. Right? You can do that, right? As long as you just do your time like a man. So, and will there always be a few officers that go out of their way to do something? Sure, there'll be officers that go out of their way. You know what I mean? That's like, even on the street, there's going to be officers that go out of their way to harass people. This is why prison is really some place you guys got to stay out of. You know what I mean? It's their house. It's not the prisoner's house. You need to remember that. So allow me to end by giving you a few statistics in the Department of Corrections, that the deaths in custody in the last 12 months have been 137. That doesn't mean murders or beatings. that 137 people have died in the last 12 months in the Department of Corrections. Out of a population of 33,091, that is up 10% from several years, from 2 years before. 21% have been for medical reasons. 21% of those 137 that have died in the Department of Corrections, 21% have been in medical. 1% have been in solitary confinement. 23% were in the general housing unit. 18% is missing. There is no justification. We don't hear a statistic on 18%. 42% of those prisoners have been white. 45% of the prisoners have been black. And then they have 9% listed as other. 1% has been listed as homicide. This is overall for the whole system. 1% has been listed as homicide. 64% have been listed as natural causes. 7% have been listed to overdose. 10% have been listed to suicide. And 18%, as I said, is unknown. The information is missing. I don't like statistics too much anyway, but I wanted to give you a little idea. It's too easy to manipulate statistics. That's why I don't like statistics, because a lot of people that are giving the information on those statistics usually have an agenda, so it's very hard to follow the statistics. But, as I said, this is just another unfortunate situation, but the news is that 3 officers have been let go for this beating death. They are under intense investigation. I do believe criminal charges are going to come forth, and a total of 15 have been cut out altogether. The body cameras were off in this incident. I know that they're looking into that. The governor is looking into that. There is no body camera footage of this incident as we know of yet, and that's what's going on. It looks like criminal charges will be brought in this case, so we'll see what happens. For everyone that's watching and everyone that's listening, please live right. Please do the right thing. If you're doing drugs and alcohol, please stop. Get them out of your life. If you're doing drugs and alcohol, the chances of you getting into trouble increase tremendously, and that's a statistic that is true. So stay clean, live right, and I send you the very best. Take care.
Investigations underway into the death Saturday of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi, inmate at Mid-State Correctional in Oneida County. 15 prison staff members currently on administrative leave because of it. News Channel 9's Victoria Kellogg says watchdog groups have a number of concerns at Mid-State that go back before Nantwi died.
It's been 85 days since Marcy inmate Robert Brooks was beaten to death, with correction officers being charged. Now inmate Messiah Nantwi in the facility across the street has died. Other inmates telling the New York Times he was a victim of assault. So far, a cause of death has not been given, but Governor Hochul saying the circumstances of his death appear to be from, quote, extremely disturbing conduct. And the independent prison monitoring agency claims that the recent death at Mid-State echoes previous concerns they've been aware of.
It was struggling with understaffing, short staffing. It was not seeming to meet the complex needs of the large and vulnerable population that's housed there at Mid-State, where more than half of people in custody have mental health diagnosis.
Based on her visit back in January, numerous concerns were brought to their eyes that involves the level of professionalism and its staff harassing others while on the clock.
Deep concern, and I think also just underscores for us that, as we've said before, the murder of Robert Brooks at Marcy was not an isolated incident, that this really does speak to a broader culture within DOCS of violence.
Issuing 24 institutional cultural improvement suggestions to the Department for Inmates and Employees within the state prisons weeks after the Marcy inmate death.
Therapeutic programs for incarcerated people, increased wellness support for staff, programs that bring incarcerated people and staff together to kind of build safe environments and programs jointly. In addition to expediting installation of cameras.
Officials currently investigating what led to this young inmate's death. Victoria Kellogg, News Channel 9.
It's both the state attorney general's office and state police who are right now investigating Nantwi's death.